Hello. Hello. Hey guys. Welcome in. Hello everybody. Welcome. It's Monday night. What's up, people? Hello. Welcome in. Glad to see you all. Hello, Kevin. All right, guys, welcome in. Today we are going to be drawing architecture. And exciting because I've always wanted to draw this cathedral. Those of you who have seen it in the poll probably know. It is a very famous cathedral in Moscow called St. Basil's Cathedral. And I didn't really know much about this cathedral except that it looks like it's made of candy. And ever since I've seen it, ever since I saw this building, and I think there's a few actually that are similar. But yeah, this cathedral was originally constructed in 1555. And it still looks like it could have been built yesterday, which is pretty cool. So anybody here, Willy Wonka's cathedral, anybody here been to Moscow or have seen this incredible cathedral? Let me try and get a like another view of it. Anyway, I'm so glad that this won the poll because it is something that I've always wanted to draw, and I'm still getting pictures of it just because like there are so many different views of it. And yeah, it looks like candy. It looks like, definitely looks like something that is toy size. Like this doesn't look real to me. But it is something that I think would be really, really fun because we can take these shapes as inspiration and we can learn how to draw it in perspective. So anyway, welcome in GeoCat and Jess Fraser. Welcome in. Hi, Quinn. Let's see. Shout out to those of you who got here early. Galena, Starverse Castle, and Jaden. Welcome in. And Maddie. All right. So this cathedral is in Moscow. So I've never been, but when I look at it, it looks like it's made out of candy and I can just take a big bite out of it, like a cake. Yeah, the gingerbread. You know, now that I think about it, there's like lots of kind of like when I think about old Russian folklore, I kind of think about this type of like these types of patterns. So before we get started, if you didn't know, our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible to everyone. And we're not just a YouTube channel, we are an online school of illustration, helping art nerds turn their income into passion. I'm sorry, turn their passion into income. Oh my goodness. Shout out to our amazing students and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching your skills improve in our classes and weekly critiques. So if you're an art nerd, be sure to join our Discord, where you can find our notes and artwork from streams, as well as art challenges and other resources to help you improve as an artist. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with our challenges because on the Discord, every month we have a new challenge, and this month's challenge is awesome architecture. Architecture is not drawn enough, and it's one of those skills that we all need to tackle at some point. You know, it's always more fun to draw characters, yes, but the characters have to live somewhere, not just like a blank background. So this month is dedicated to drawing environments, drawing buildings, drawing castles, drawing, you know, different kinds of cool environments. Now there's architecture. Architecture could be, you know, bridges, it could be castles, it could be, you know, like hobbit dwellings inside, like dug inside a hill or underground, right? So you can really use your imagination here and submit your artwork for the monthly challenge. So our first submission is by Waterbeam 11. You said that this was inspired by Bern, Switzerland, and I love how you get a really good sense of perspective and just like a sense of how high you are by just seeing the rooftops. I love all the empty space at the top. You can kind of see the mountains behind it. It just gives it this really nice, you feel like you're standing on top of a rooftop, just looking out, lots of space. I can feel the fresh air. It's a beautiful composition, very nice and simple. Anyway, shout out to you, Waterbeam, for doing the challenge. It looks lovely, and I really like the nostalgic colors that you've used as well. Second submission is by Chronically Exhausted Cat. I think, GeoCat, I think you're in here. Are you still here? Artist in chat. I saw this on the Discord. Yeah, there you are. So I saw this on the Discord and I thought, oh, all those windows. You have to draw all of those windows. I feel your pain. But I think this piece turned out beautifully. I think you did a really nice job on the trees and sort of emphasizing the street lamps and just like the scale of the buildings. Yeah, I think it looks pretty cool. And I love seeing traditional art on the server. It's actually a street. In the okay, that's actually a street in your city. Yeah, really, really good. Really, really nicely done. Again, it's even harder to draw perspective traditionally, so good for you for doing that. One trick I have with the windows, though, is instead of drawing them individually, you can kind of draw perspective lines, and then it'll be easier to draw them together. So hopefully I'll go over some of this in the stream if you remind me. All right. And our third submission is by Tamarind Lover. Tamarind Lover, I can't tell you how cool this looks. I love how you drew everything in perspective too, in like this nice quirky room. And you have a floor plan peeking through. It's just a really nice way of mapping out a small environment, even with like the mess inside, right? It looks lived in. Sometimes you see a lot of perspective drawings and they don't really, they just look super pristine, right? I love how like in here you can see the mess and there's so much detail. Yeah, this looks awesome. Nicely done. Shout out to the people who submitted, our lovely Discord community. If you guys want to get in on the monthly challenge, there is still one weekend left to get in your awesome architecture submissions. And hopefully, if you draw along with me in the stream, you can submit your artwork to be featured for the next stream. And if you haven't joined the Discord already, you can join now. There is a link in the video description. You can go ahead and join and you'll be able to see our most recent challenge. All right, let's get into it. Okay. Oh yeah, Quinn, definitely submit your Sky Islands. That would be so good. Sounds great. All right. So let's get into architecture. So I thought that I would draw this castle, or this cathedral. I keep saying castle. I thought I would draw it and kind of break it down into perspective and ways of thinking about it. So first of all, when you're drawing architecture, you can think of a floor plan if you have a floor plan. Okay, so having a floor plan will help you relate to all of the rooms, and you'll be able to draw something out much easier. So for example, if your floor plan looks like this, if it kind of, you know, looks like this, I'm drawing this kind of in perspective, right? So let's say this is your floor plan. I'm just making this up. If this is your floor plan, then you know you can map out, okay, like there's gardens here, right? There's like maybe there's like a building here, there's like a fountain over here, there's like a few big trees here, there's like a little pagoda over here, right? And then once you kind of map that out, then you can figure out, okay, well here is my building. Let's say my building is about this big, and then there's gardens and there's like trees. Like it just kind of helps you think about how things would look, right? Having a floor plan is really helpful because you can visualize it in space a lot better, right? And then, you know, you can kind of start to think about it as a whole. So if you don't have a floor plan, that's okay. What you can do is you can simplify into forms, like very, very simple forms. So basically, when you are drawing something like this, right? The best way to think about it, and let me just make these images a little smaller here. The best way to think about it is to actually draw in the individual pieces here. So here you can see they're mostly cylinders, right? They're cylindrical. So you can think of these pillars, right? You can just kind of like think of them as individual shapes. So we've got big cylinders, small cylinders. You've got kind of like a cone shape at the top, right? There's a cone shape, and then there's like an octagon. So if I was to draw an octagon, like if I look at this circle over here, right? It is octagonal. So what I can do is, instead of like there's one way you can actually like draw an octagon, and then, you know, draw 8 sides and then another 8 sides, but it's actually easier if you draw it as a cylinder and then break it up into 8, right? And then draw in the sides. Now the sides really don't have too much detail to them, right? So it's almost better to kind of draw it as a cylinder first, and then what you can do is you can kind of like break it up into shapes, and then you can actually alter the shapes, right? But if I'm drawing an octagon, I would have a much easier time drawing it as a cylinder rather than trying to draw all of the sides. Same thing if it's 7 sides, right? 7 sides, 6 sides. The only way I would draw it as like a prism is if it had 4 sides, right? So if something has a prism, you would draw it like this. So if you are not very good at drawing architecture, or just not good, not very confident in drawing forms, okay, practice drawing your forms first, because it's going to be really hard for you to draw forms or like architecture if you don't know how to draw forms, right? So the first thing when you're drawing architecture is you want to think about forms. Construct with forms, right? And then when you're doing this, you are simplifying. You must simplify in order to not go crazy when you're drawing complex pieces of architecture, furniture, like anything complex, including figures, right? You want to do your best to try and break them down into forms. So for example, you can probably see there's like a Hershey's Kiss type of shape, right, for the dome. So there's different ways you can draw it. One is you can draw it as a sphere, like this, right? And then you kind of draw in the cylinder. So if I look at this shape over here, right, I can see a little bit of that sphere inside this cylinder, right? And then the top, let's say the top is like right there, then I would just extend it, extend the shape around the circle. Like this, right? So it's kind of like an onion shape. But to me, it's easier to draw it as a sphere and then sort of add that tip to it because it maintains the volume. I mean, if you try to just kind of draw it freehand like this, you can do it, right? Don't get me wrong, you could do it. But if you were to draw these exact same shape in different sizes, it's much easier to draw that circle. Let me just change to a pencil so it feels more sketchy. So let's say I'm drawing, you know, these Hershey Kiss shapes as different sizes, right? Here there are different sizes. Now if I combine them and I say, okay, I'm going to take a slice off all of them, right? I'm going to take roughly, I don't know, about a fifth, right? A fifth off all of them. And then I add like a little triangle on top of all of them. And that triangle relative to the circle is the same. It's a lot easier for me to draw it this way, right? And then take a darker color and then draw over it, right? Like this. It's a lot easier for me to keep my shapes consistent if I construct them the same way rather than trying to eyeball them. Right? And then if I say, okay, well, the ones in the image seem a little bit wider, then, you know, I can add a little bit to either side, let's say, right? But if I do it consistently, then it's way easier than just eyeballing it, especially for shapes that can appear a little bit like hard to describe, right? Like I would probably describe it as a teardrop shape, but the closest shape or form would still be a sphere. So hopefully that makes sense. So the way you construct your forms, it's way easier to start off simple and then modify than to kind of draw something super custom, right? Because then it's a lot harder to replicate. I prefer freehanding too, Quinn. And there's something to say about freehanding. Like, you know, when you're sketching, you can absolutely freehand. Like if I'm drawing concept art for a castle, right? Let's say, I would definitely want to freestyle it. Like I'm saying, okay, well maybe, you know, maybe the roof kind of looks like this, right? Like absolutely. But if I'm trying to draw something super accurately, then I wouldn't, only because I only drew all of these in one perspective, right? But imagine if I want to try and draw it in a different perspective. Okay, if I had to draw in a different perspective, let's say this is my circle. Now I'm cutting off the bottom over here, okay? And then you can only see like a tiny bit of that roof or a tiny bit of that tip, right? There's the tower. Now it's going in perspective. I can still draw and figure out what that dome could look like, right? Or if I'm looking down at it, right? If I'm looking down at it, okay, I'm going to start with this sphere. And then let's say the tip is over here, right? So it's kind of doing this, right? There's the tip. And then the, maybe the castle or the cylinder is like here, going this way, right? This is the only reason why I would draw it with a sphere. This almost looks like a bun, you know, like those Chinese steamed buns, or a dollop of toothpaste, sure. Anyway, so this is basically the reason why you want to draw things this way, is because you want to be able to communicate by drawing forms in different angles out of your head, right? Being able to draw them out of your head. Freehand versus something like the grid method. Yeah, we're not going to use a grid method here. I'm just kind of talking about just very simple principles to keep in mind, especially when you're drawing things in perspective. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about, and I've talked about this before, is POV. I feel like I've talked about this many times, but we'll go into it again. POV. So let's put it up here. Find your horizon. Find your horizon line and overall I'm going to say overall structure in perspective. Okay, so what I mean by this is when you are drawing a building, let's say we're drawing this cathedral, okay? And let's say I am here and I'm like looking up at this cathedral. And I want it, you know, my POV is very, very low. So what that means is like my horizon line is about there, right? If I'm looking at, this is kind of, let's say this is me, this dotted line follows my eye line, which means that if I'm drawing this cathedral, right, let's say this is a pillar, then this part of the pillar is going to be straight. Whereas as I move up into space, right? My perspective is going to change. Like, it's going to get more and more distorted as you know, I'm looking up, which means overall the perspective of this building, right, is going to appear wider at the bottom and smaller at the top. Right? So I didn't measure this. I just kind of like eyeballed it, right? So if you know where your POV is, or your line of vision, then you know that you're not going to be drawing the building like this. Right? Now that looks like it's leaning over, right? That's the wrong POV. If I can see the top of that cylinder, that's the wrong POV. So this applies to whether you're drawing people, whether you're drawing, you know, like anything in context, you want to consider your POV. So again, everything is going to go this way, right? All the lines are going to curve this way. So this is kind of like a 3-point perspective where everything is converging to a point in the sky. So this would be 3-point. And your other 2 points are going to be like over here, right? So you got 1 point, another point, and then your 3rd point. And so if you want to draw something really monumental, right, then you can kind of exaggerate it like this, right? Like, let's say I wanted to draw, I'm not following this cathedral exactly. I'm just kind of drawing a very distorted example just to kind of show you how to make something look really big and how to make something look really small. Let's say this is now the dome, right? This attaches there. There's a little bit of that peak over there. You know, this could be the Taj Mahal as well, right? Here's my circle. There's my circle. So you can see with just some basic forms, right? You can like pretty much construct any structure as long as you know your POV and as long as you know which direction the cylinders are turning. So all of these pillars, right, are going to curve down like this, right? They're all curving down. So the curves at the top are a lot more than the curves at the bottom, and it's actually going to straighten out right along that POV. Okay, it's going to get very straight, and then it's going to get slightly more curved, more curved, more curved, until it hits the top. Okay, so more curved, and then straight at horizon line, right? So this is like the only thing you really need to remember to draw convincing buildings, because then you can really just make it up, right? Play around with forms, know where you're looking, whether you're looking up or whether you're looking down. So we can do a thought experiment exercise where we now draw the same sketch but looking down. Okay, we're going to draw the same sketch. Now my horizon line is going to be here, and here's my person, and I'm looking down. Okay, I'm looking down. There, I'm looking down. So let's say I am on another building, like a really, really tall building. And I'm looking down at the cathedral. Okay, so let's say the cathedral is like down here. Okay, so that means that all of my cylinders, every single one of my cylinders is going to be, I can see the top of them, right? So then the best way to think about this, right? Like I can count, let's say there's 1, 2, 3, 4 pillars and then like 4 in between, roughly. So it's like one big one in the middle, 4 on either side that are bigger, and then 4 smaller ones. Okay, so I can memorize this. So basically it's like a big one, right? Here's the pillars and then some small ones, right? So I'm looking down, and then really you want to think about, okay, how big is this structure? Because right now it looks kind of big. Let's make it smaller. Okay, we're really looking down. Okay, so now then what you want to do is you want to think about, okay, how high is this structure? So if this is the outside, right? Roughly how high is it? I'm going to put it in a cube, right? And that cube is probably also going to be in 3-point perspective, right? It's going to be bigger at the top and smaller at the bottom. So when I say floor plan, this is really what I mean. A few circles, right? Floor plan. Okay. So then all you really need to do once you bring everything up is you draw that floor plan again. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And then you bring them down. You probably want them to be a little bit bigger. Right? So this is my overall structure. And then you can say, okay, well, the 4 pillars on either side are a little bit shorter, whereas the big pillar in the middle is a little bit taller, right? So then I would say, okay, this one is going to be taller. So this one I'm going to bring up, and let's see, this one is the octagon, right? So see, as soon as this passes the horizon line, okay, as soon as it passes the horizon line, it's going to curve this way. You're not going to be able to see the top of that cylinder anymore, right? Because it went past that horizon line. So this is the interesting part, is because once you know where your horizon line is, then you should know which way your structure should curve. And then I have to make this smaller again because I'm running out of space. Okay, so then you can add your pillars on. So let's add this circle. Right, and then for the ones here, let's say, assuming they kind of look like bun shapes, right? There we go. So this is me kind of like drawing it without really looking at the reference, only the floor plan, right? This is really all I need to be able to draw just using the floor plan. And again, I'm imagining it, right? So now if you know that you can see the bottom, or sorry, that you can see the top of these bun shapes, that means that the middle right, is going to be like here, right? Like depending on how tall it is, the middle and the way that I would draw these would change, right? Depending on where this sits in space. And then let's see, the smaller domes, right? The smaller ones, let's say they fit in here, right? Then they would be a lot lower. So let's say the smaller domes are like a little bit lower. Let's say they sit on this line. And let's say I bring them out like this. And then right, for these ones, you would even see more of the top, right? Like the top would be like here. Which means like you probably won't see the tip as much, right? Poking through. So this is kind of how you would break down something and be able to draw it out of your head in perspective, right? So we took something that is fairly organic in shape, but we were able to kind of draw it in two very exaggerated perspectives, just based on looking at them in different ways. So I just realized that I drew the middle in the same way, but actually the cathedral is more of an octagon, I think. Let's see. Yeah, it's more of an octagon, so it's kind of more like this shape. But even if I wanted to, you know, do it this way, I would still need to consider like how I would break it up first, right? As a cylinder. I would draw it as a cylinder, then I would break it up. Because these lines, right, across the building will need to also follow the perspective lines. Right? So yeah, you can definitely eyeball it somewhat, right? It's definitely fine to eyeball. Anyway, I didn't draw it as a, I just realized I didn't really draw it as a cone shape. So let's do that. Be true to the actual cathedral, but if I drew it as like a cone shape, right, that cone is going to bend up. Like this. So, all right, let me know if you guys have any questions about perspective. And we can start breaking this down and start our final drawing. You can do this with any type of building, like whether you have a floor plan or not, you can definitely do this fairly easily, I would say. It's not really that difficult once you get the hang of it. So I'm just going to move this to a new layer. And let's get to drawing. Welcome in, Scribs. Scribs says, watching these streams is like collecting the Infinity Stones. I'm very glad you are learning a lot. I'm very happy. Super happy. That is the idea. The idea is to make art education easily accessible and free. All right. So anybody can do this, right? It's really not that hard. Perspective is not that hard once you get the hang of it. So I showed you how to draw buildings in perspective. So now, like, what happens if you want to just like draw from observation? So find a view that you really like. So out of the two here, although I like the perspective in this one over here, whoops. Although I like the perspective in that one, like it looks like I'm looking up at it, I find I like the silhouette of this one better. I find that it's almost more more castle-like, and I think I'm gonna go with this type of view, but I'm gonna give it a little bit more of that perspective found in this one, right? So I'm going to show you how to use reference, but not actually copy it exactly, and actually be able to draw something similar. All right. Hey, Wings Me. 105 anime art in the darkness. Glad you're here. Hope you're drawing along with me. One of our lovely students. Okay. All right. So the first thing we'll do is we will figure out our POV. So let me just clear out some room here before I start. I'm just going to move some of this stuff up. All right. Okay, so just to start, like right now, you can always figure out where the horizon line is, just based on where things start to look straight. So if I zoomed in here, right? I zoomed in and I just took like a line tool. Let's see if I can find one. I'm using Rebel, so this one, I'm not actually sure if I can actually use a line tool here. Maybe. Ha! I never actually looked for one, but okay, we'll go with freehand then. So if you draw a straight line, right? Like you can kind of see, you know, this line is curving, right? Just a little bit. This line is curving just a little bit. However, this line here is pretty straight, right? This line here, it gets a little straight, right? It doesn't have to be exact, but once you start seeing how straight it is, right? Like here you can still start to see that there's like a little bit of a point. It's still tilting up. So the horizon line is probably, my guess is it's probably down here somewhere. Because then everything else starts to curve up, right? And up and up and up. It's not as dramatic as I drew it, but it's just something to to keep in mind. If you can't find the horizon line, then you can always find it by looking at curves. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is start to sketch out. And I'm doing this all freehand. We're not going to use perspective lines or like a perspective grid. I could do that, but I think being able to freehand stuff that looks like it's in perspective is really important. And we should be able to figure out how to do that. So what I'm doing right now is I'm kind of drawing my, my horizon line, the line of the ground, and sketching out the top pillar, so to speak, the top tower, right? How tall do I want it to be? So if this is the top, and this is the bottom, right? Here's my bottom, here's my top. From there to there, where is the midline? Where's the middle? So the middle looks like it aligns with the bottom of that cone, right? So here's the top, here's the bottom, here's the middle. When you eyeball stuff, you always want to measure it, like roughly, right? You can use your finger, you can do whatever it is you need to do that. Kevin says press shift. Oh, thank you. Ooh, that looks cool. All right, all right, all right. Okay. Thanks for the tip. All right. That's cool. I wonder if it's pressure sensitive. Let's see. Oh, nice. Nice. It is. That's wicked. Okay. I don't want to rely on it, but it's so easy. All right. So let's draw that center line. Sketch that out. And then draw in the cone. Okay, so you have to put your cursor down, then press. Whoops. I find that it takes even more time, so, but it's cool. Personally, I like just being able to freehand and to sort of practice my lines instead of using the ruler. Because I don't know about you, but if you've ever tried to like draw traditionally with a ruler, it is a pain. It is not fun. And then it smudges, right, on top of everything else. Just not fun. You also want to draw through certain things, right? You want to be able to draw through the forms. All right, I'm just catching up with the chat here. Where things start to look straight. Okay, so here we got our biggest building. So you always want to work big to small. Let me add this. Oops. Let me add this to my notes here. Where did I put that arrow? Okay, here we go. Measure and work big to small. You always want to measure and work big to small, because if you work small to big, what can end up happening is, you know, you lose sight of the big picture, and then it's harder to draw things and measure things out if you start with the details. Okay, so if you want any type of precision, right, like this is probably the best way to do it. Okay, so I've drawn out this pillar. Now I'm going to say, okay, there's like a little tower here that's kind of like in the middle. And we can sketch that out. So only when I've drawn out the big do I then section it off for the small. So what's everybody doing on this Monday night? You guys drawing along with me, or you just have me playing in the background while you do other stuff? Yeah, one day I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna do it plein air. I'm gonna be able to actually illustrate this from observation. Will be really fun. So the other things I look at are, you know, if I drew a line all the way across, where would this section go? It would probably be halfway, right? Like halfway about there. So these are the things I'm thinking about when I'm measuring, right? You always want to measure as much as you can, right? And working big to small, then you have a good chance of your measurements being correct, right? Rather than the other way around. So the reason why I like working big to small is because it generally keeps me on track and I don't get lost in the details. Right, so you can see there are two things that overlap it, but if I drew the small ones, like let's say I started with this, and then I drew this, and then I drew this, it can be done. It's just a lot easier to draw the largest thing, divide that in half, and then say, oh, this is the height of the small tower, right? And then it's also easier to measure out that negative space. So here there's another tower, comes down. This one is a little wider, probably like 1.5 times to 2 times wider than this one. These are the things I'm thinking about when I'm drawing, right? Like I want to be able to sort of always have a comparison. Like it's always good to use one thing as a unit of measurement, right? So should you eyeball? Absolutely. It makes you a lot, just like a lot more observant. I don't know if you've noticed, but when you really start to observe, you'll start to see things you've never seen before. You'll start to see people in new ways that you probably didn't notice before. But yeah, it's one of the joys of being an artist. Just catching up with the chat. You're rendering, Castle's rendering. Good for you. Scribs is writing scripts for your webcomic. Wow, that's awesome. Quentin, good job for hitting your goals. And Wings Me Enemy Art working on coloring the creepy creature I posted on school. Yeah, that was so original. I really liked it. And I'm excited to see where it goes. I think that piece is like very, when I say original, like the style of it is really unique. So I think you can definitely play it up. Background while drawing, great. Oh, Kevin, thanks. Drawing while talking. I always learn so much from your streams. You're such a good teacher. Thank you. Okay. So everything here is eyeballed, right? Oh, Galena, I hope your head feels better. Sorry you gotta go. Random question. Does tracing over real world images a good way to develop perspective and form? Good question. Yes, it is actually. I encourage my students to, like when they're drawing figures, right, to kind of like trace the cubes on top. You're not really tracing because you have to place the cubes on top, right? It's not like tracing an image, but it's actually like being able to simplify the torso into different shapes. And looking for those shapes or forms. I think tracing is absolutely fine, especially if you're like studying perspective, it's fine. Like tracing for study purposes is absolutely fine. And I think that you would definitely learn a lot from it. I hear a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to be able to draw without reference. And, I'm worried that I use so much reference. And I'm just like, you have to learn how to use reference before you can ditch the reference. Right? You gotta know the rules to break them always. You can't just expect that you're gonna be able to draw something magical out of your head when you haven't spent the time observing things, right? Like our memories are limited to only the things that we've seen. There's countless things we haven't seen. And, just relying on references and your previous, I don't know how many years, however old you are, if you're 20, you only have 20 years of visual experience. Like you've only seen 20 years worth of stuff, maybe in movies and video games and all this stuff, but that's your visual library, right? If you limit your visual library, and like that's just like considering you have to remember, right? Like how many things can you actually remember vividly? Like I know Jesse has a photographic memory. I'm very jealous. I don't remember anything that I see very well. So I definitely need a reference. But guess what? If I draw something once and it takes me an hour to like study all the pieces and figure it out, then I'll be able to draw something similar to it, without reference someday. But like, guys, like you can't expect to draw something perfectly without reference. Reference is your friend. Do not be afraid of it. Like, you're only doing yourself a disservice if you're trying to move away from it. The only way I think you should move away from reference is like, if you're drawing architecture, figure out a floor plan, right? And like do what I just did. Like, just kind of like sketch it out. Sketch it out in a different perspective. Like, that's what you can do without reference. But even then, you're still kind of referencing a floor plan, right? Or make up a floor plan and then figure it out. Draw a cube, figure it out. Yeah, don't be afraid of reference. Okay, so then for the bottom, I'm not exactly sure what's going on. You can see I'm not zoomed in to see all the details because I would confuse myself. I'm just trying to break it up into shapes as best I can. There's some kind of like sculpture here. It's a famous sculpture. It's gonna live as a scribble for now. There's some trees. And let's see, let's move this reference here. Just gonna put it closer to me so I can zoom in on this. Whoops. Oh, darn. What is the shortcut for redo? Control Shift Z. Okay. Come on, bring that picture back. Okay. All right. Hey, Kenny, welcome in. Quinn says, I draw without reference to test my knowledge. Yep, definitely. It'll definitely test your knowledge. And then what do you do when you hit a roadblock? All right. I definitely think that using reference is it's like something that we're taught to do in art school. And not just referencing things, but referencing styles, referencing other illustrators, and like seeing how they were able to simplify things, or how they were able to harmonize or use limited color, right? So like being able to draw a building is one thing, but having having good references to really help you build your style is also great. Not to say you have to copy everything, but just to kind of like we know what we like and we know what we don't like, right? So if you can have a really good library of style references that you love, it can help you find your style a little faster as well. Okay, so then there's some trees and bushes. That is important for context, right? Like having a tree right here. Just gives you an idea of how big something is. And says, or work on something else until I can figure out what I don't understand. That's a really good strategy. Like just taking a break, getting critique. Yeah, which is why everybody here should join the Discord if you haven't already. It's a great place to get critique. We have some wonderful, wonderful people on the server who volunteer their time, and they're called the verified critiquers. And they can give you a really, really good second opinion on your artwork. If you're struggling and you're not really sure what to do next, join the Discord. If you want feedback from instructors, you can check out our programs like our classes or our memberships. Okay, so we have the sketch. We have a bit of a sketch here. The 3-point perspective, I can exaggerate if I make the bottom wider and the top a little bit less wide. But again, I still like the silhouette of this. And I pretty much drew it from reference instead of changing the perspective. I had planned on changing the perspective, but then I'm like, I really like the silhouette more so than the others. So now what I can do is start to divide some stuff out, right? So there's the center line. Let's put in some details here. I'm just going to change my brush to something a little bit more like ink, and just reduce the opacity here. And I'm going to try and see if I can do like a watercolor. We'll see. All right, so ink. Let's take a look at what brushes I can use. Fountain Square Wood 2. What does that look like? Oh, okay, cool. Fountain Square. Yeah, I think I like this better. Let's see. Yeah, no, I like the original. I might use the wood square for like the trees, but the really cool thing as well about Rebel is that you can adjust the size, the opacity, and water. So like if I turn the water slider, which is right here, if I turn that water slider up, then it starts to bleed a little bit. I don't know if you can see this. Let's zoom in. You can start to see how it starts to bleed? Cool, huh? Whereas if I remove the water, then... Oh, it's still bleeding. Huh. Okay. Let's remove all the water. Let's see if it... Yeah, so now it holds its texture a little bit more. Then, you know, you can play with the opacity. And then like opacity water. That's so cool. So cool. Look, it's bleeding over here at the bottom. And like, it's kind of interacting with all the other brush strokes, right? So cool. Yeah, I'm using Rebel, and I'm just like playing around with the different inks and just testing it out and just kind of seeing what I want to be using. So I think I'm gonna use the Fountain Square. Yeah, I like it. Okay, okay, let's try again. This is ink play. Let's do another ink. Line art. Okay, now let's do the line art. Let's see. Oh, we'll turn up the water a little bit. Okay. All right, so where do I want to line this? One thing that I didn't do in the sketch phase, which I should do, is to really figure out how to draw these spirals, right? So really the best way to draw these spirals is to figure out where they start and where they stop. So let's say there's one here, right? And then you can kind of draw out the first spiral. And then generally they get a little bit wider, right? So then you can kind of map out how wide you want them to be. So as they move around the dome, they're going to get smaller and smaller. So I kind of want to draw this out first before I I draw my final lines, right? I want to be able to follow something. And they're all different. They're all adorned a little bit differently. This one as well. So yeah, when you're drawing something like this, you definitely want to figure out like how you want to be drawing in the lines ahead of time, right? Like if I didn't map this out, I would have a really hard time with the line art. But if I want my line art to feel very confident, then it's a good idea to like do it in the sketch so that I can just follow or trace my lines without it feeling so tough. And then this one's weird because this one has kind of like an X shape to it. It's almost like going in opposite directions. This would really confuse me. if I just like freehanded it without sketching it first. Okay. I was actually excited to color this, but I don't know if I'm going to have time to do it. We'll see. Like, color is so important to this structure, to this piece of architecture, that I feel like I would kind of be not doing it justice if I didn't color it. Yeah, Rebelle has some really cool features, and that's why like I'm really excited to try out the watercolor feature just to see if it can do those really cool washes. All right. Okay, so if you're drawing patterns and stuff and you have to freehand it, like don't worry so much about the like the windows and stuff. It's a lot easier if you just draw the alignments. Like here I'm drawing these triangles, right? And then I can then draw like, okay, all the windows, like GeoCAD, if you're still here, right? Let's say you're drawing a building and the building is like this, right? Let's just say. Instead of drawing like windows like this, right, individually, I mean, you could, but it gets really tedious. The easy thing to do, and I'm not even going to use the freehand, I mean the line tool in Rebelle, because you can't really do that with a pencil. But you would just like draw out the lines that kind of follow your perspective, right? And then find the middle. So the middle would actually be here, right? Then guess where's middle, right? So you can kind of see like this is a lot thinner than this. Then you can divide it up again. Then you draw your windows, right? So then you would draw in 1 window, 2 windows, 3, 4. So you're kind of like following your original lines or your original grid, right? So the bottoms all align and the tops all align. And technically you could also, you know, just like follow the grid, and then you can erase your lines afterwards instead of drawing them individually. I think, Quinn, like isometric is a really good practice. It is definitely a really good way of practicing. And if you are here, I'm going to be practicing my digital line art and just see how it goes. All right, let's do this. See, once you have yourself set up really nicely, then it's so much easier to have confident line art, right? Like some of my students ask me, they're like, how do my line art is so shaky. I can't get it right. And I'm like, okay, well, how are you getting there? Like, are you trying to do everything in one step? Are you trying to like get all the line art and all the proportions right and everything in one step? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that's why. You haven't taken the time to break it down, right, into like small chunks for yourself, right? Like here, the reason why it's easy for me to freehand these shapes is because I've drawn the triangle underneath. I've drawn the overlying structure underneath so that it's like a lot easier for me to freehand things, right? I don't have to worry about figuring everything out at the same time. I can just focus on my line art, which is what I'm doing, which is why it feels a lot more confident. Like even if it's not exact, right? Because you have structure underneath and because you've already in a way like sketched it out once, right? It becomes just like so much easier. I'm trying not to get too lost in the details here. And you can see I can then continue to make adjustments, right? Like if I'm like, oh, well, I kind of drew this dome a little bit too tall, no problem. I can make adjustments, right? I can make this roof bumpy because I've already drawn the structure underneath. And then I can make it look somewhat organic along these lines that I've already drawn. Like it's not perfect, right? But you can get a sense of the pattern. Like you can see that one is spiky and one isn't, just in the lines. Like, wow, getting lost in all these details. It's fun though. There's just a lot less to keep track of, right? When you work big to small. And I gotta say, I really do like this pen that I'm using. What I actually really like about Rebelle is just how simple it is. Like there's some glitches here and there. Sometimes like the selection tool doesn't deselect, which is kind of a pain, but Rebelle 8 is now out. I'm still using 7, but there was a new update. Yeah, I love how all the tops are similar but different too. Kevin asked a good question. Is there a good color palette for this? Because the colors are so chaotic. Like, to answer your question, Kevin, you can have chaotic colors as long as the ratios of those colors are not all even. If that makes sense. So like this building is primarily pink or this like red color, right? Let's just say red to be really simple. What percentage of red would you say it is? So if you squint at this, right? If you squint at it, what percentage of this building would you say is red? Anyone in the chat? So I would say it's probably 70% or more red. I'm just guessing here. At least 50%. Kevin, you think 50% or more? Okay, if you think 50% or more, what would be the next color? What is the next color that you see that's most dominant besides the red? Because to really understand color, right? You'll start to see like you can get away with using any colors, really, as long as you use good ratios of those colors, and so that it doesn't look like it doesn't look like child's play. Graphic design is my passion, you know, like rainbow colors, screaming rainbow terrible colors. We've all seen those where you're like, ugh. Kitty Karu says 60 or more. Next would be yellow. So, okay, that's interesting. You see yellow. I guess gold, right? It would be gold. Okay. I actually saw the teal as the second dominant color. Anybody else see the teal? I actually saw the teal and then the gold. I see teal because like there's also blue and there's also green, but like the average I would say is teal, right? So I would say maybe on average it's like 70% red and 30% other colors, right? So if it's you're looking at the wrong reference. Oh, okay. The ratio is important, guys, because things can look a lot more sophisticated when you have a good ratio of colors, values, just holds up better together. And I would probably say that it's like maybe 15% teal, maybe 10% teal. And then like maybe under 10% white, and then I would say gold, right? So really, the majority of the building is red. And why is that important? Well, because it's not actually, the colors aren't actually super disorganized, right? Or all over the place. They're very intentional. They're getting away with this bright color because they're using it in a very sophisticated way with those ratios, right? So when you're doing an illustration and you want to use really bright colors, just make sure that you're not using them like 50-50. Because then it is going to look very childish. Because you could argue that this is a primary color scheme, right? It's got red, it's got blue, it's got yellow, almost triadic, right? But not quite. Getting kind of lost here in the details, just bear with me. Like trying not to get confused. We actually did most of the hard work, right? By just like sketching out the proportions and sketching out, you know, all the the forms. So this part should be easier. I'm going to add another line here because I feel like this part is a little bit tall. So I'm just going to add another section. There we go. No one will notice. Also, one of my students asked this week, how do I fix my mistakes? If I make a mistake, and you know, they were talking traditional art. If I make a mistake, how do I cover it up? What do I do? And to quote my dance teacher, I took a dance course in high school because I loved dance. And my instructor said, and it's like coordinated dance. It was called orchesis. So everything was like coordinated. We all had to, you know, stay on you know, the same rhythm and like end in the same pose and all that, right? So when you're not when you like mess up, it's really obvious, right? You're not in sync. And so I asked my my dance teacher the exact same thing. I said, "Miss, what do I do if I mess up?" And she's like, "Just have a stupid smile on your face. Like just like smile with all your teeth, and if you smile like that, people are going to think you did it intentionally, and it was just part of the dance." So yeah, that's what you can do. Just like if you make a mistake, just remember to smile and turn it into a bird, or just like go with it, right? Like I just added an extra strip to this building. No one's gonna notice. But if you erase and you like hack away at it and then the paper's all torn up, well, I'm definitely gonna notice. So Quinn, how am I going to finish this? I think I should be able to finish the line art, at least the line art. I was going to do like a watercolor stream, but unfortunately I was sick and I missed it. So maybe I will finish this on Discord, maybe, because I really want to play around with those watercolor brushes. So if I do, I'll ping you guys. Yeah, I should be able to finish the line art at least. You're just gonna see me like draw really messy in the end. It's gonna go from like super clean to like chaos at the end, maybe. What I really like about drawing over my sketch is like I have a second attempt. At getting my lines right. Oh, I totally messed that up. I didn't realize how it went from big to small at the top. I totally didn't see that. Okay. This one is actually a little flatter. Okay, let's try this again. Sorry guys, I'm concentrating. Quinn told me about the time and I'm like, oh no, I gotta finish this. Okay. But you know, when you're drawing and it's turning out pretty good, time tends to melt away. Yes, we do have a set amount of time for these streams, but art shouldn't really be like that, right? Art should only be, you should only stop when you need to. But yeah, I appreciate the timekeeping because I totally lose track of time. You're the world's best timekeeper. Well, I'm glad to have you on my side. Oh, I totally messed up on this here. There's this little tiny dome. Thank goodness for Control Z. Holy smokes. I'd be hiding all kinds of mistakes. And perspective on that is wrong. It should be going this way. But really, like, who's gonna be looking at the way I drew those spirals? Hopefully the big picture will stand out more. I don't know if there's anybody here who's gone to Portugal. There's a place in Portugal called Sintra that has the weirdest architecture I've ever seen in my life. Like, just so weird. It looks like a mishmash of just like gothic and eclectic. Like, it's just so weird that the style of it is so weird, but it's so beautiful too at the same time, and it feels like it's like out of a fantasy movie set. I don't know if anybody's been to Sintra, but holy smokes, it's what a sight to see. Definitely put it on your list if you like castles, because they've got like just like gargoyles and weird. They would work on a certain castle for decades, right? And then by then the style would have changed. So then they just kind of add a second wing or like another part of the castle onto the original design, but like in a whole different style. And so it's just like super weird and eclectic. But yeah, one of the coolest places that I've been to with castles. I'm glad you're excited, Quinn. Like, excitement is really all we have, right? When we think about what we'll gain, and being excited is great. Because like once you know how to draw something, then you're just like, ooh, I'm excited to try it. It doesn't seem that hard anymore, right? It doesn't feel like it's gonna be that hard once there's a method. Okay, I'm gonna hide the rest in some bushes. And if you don't know how to draw something, then just like look at other parts of the castle or the cathedral and just like repeat some of the designs, right? Like if you can't see it, chances are it's going to be very similar. All right, so this part of the cathedral almost looks like eyes, and I was just going to save it until the end because it is behind everything, right? So I don't have to draw it. Like whatever is in front, I think takes priority. So then I'm gonna draw these like little eye shapes, I guess. And just kind of like follow the grid. And I feel like the eye shapes on mine are a bit wider. Sorry, not wider, just like taller in height in general. Like ultimately it doesn't matter. Because again, nobody's like really looking at the details. Really, what people are going to notice about your piece is like if the perspective is wonky, right? If the perspective is wonky or the shapes feel weird, people are going to notice. But are they going to notice that there's like an extra window, right? Like probably not, right? Like you could stare at this building for an entire day and I don't think you'd be able to memorize it, right? So you don't really need to worry too much like when you're drawing buildings that they're absolutely perfect. It's more crucial to be able to draw the perspective properly, right? Keep the POV in mind. Like those are the things that actually matter. Maybe the silhouette of the building actually matters, but everything else, not so much. Yeah, exactly. Just implying the detail. Like there's so much detail that it's not really necessary. So you can use like different line weights to be able to express detail. Right, like the lines in here I can make a little bit thinner. I don't really need to worry too much because it's ultimately like it's behind something, right? Behind these other candy-like domes. And when you're drawing structures that have some kind of lighting, like you can see the arches that I'm drawing, they do have a shadow like here along the top, right? So you can express that with thicker line weight. And oops, I forgot this door in here. So like people are going to see the darkest parts. They're going to see the parts that have the most contrast, right? So really you just need a couple of those areas for high contrast. Decide what is really priority, right? And be okay leaving stuff out. So I probably could have left these triangular pillars out because the details don't really matter that much. Or I could lighten them, right? So. The other thing you could do is you could make the outlines of some of the buildings a little bit darker, right? Like let's say I make the outline of this one a little darker, then it starts to stand out a little bit more. "10-minute warning." Oh gosh, Quinn, pressure's on. Okay, here's what I'll do first. I will draw the trees. I'm gonna try that wood brush so that I will draw the trees so that hopefully it can cover some of this stuff. Oh, this is a lot thicker than I wanted. This is like watercolor. This is not what I wanted. No. No, I'm gonna stick with my fountain square. I don't want it to be like a different style, so okay. There's a tree. There's another tree. Pretty messy, but I cannot tell what this sculpture is of, and I'm not going to zoom in because it doesn't matter. The sculpture, as long as I get like the shapes relatively similar, someone's going to look at that and be like, oh yeah, I remember there's a sculpture. Yeah, that looks familiar. That looks about right, right? No one's going to be like, wait, that's the wrong shape. I mean, there's always going to be that guy, but don't look too closely and you can see like how much you can get away with, right? Okay, there's a tree. There's another tree. Some more trees. Okay, we're close. I can see the finish line. I can just work my way to the bottom and we're almost there. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It is kind of silly line work, isn't it? For the trees, just like silly. I think really what it is random, right? Like you want your lines to look random. You don't want it to look too orderly, too contrived, right? You want it to look organic, right? So as random as possible. Now I'm just trying to put in a little bit of detail so that, and it's familiar, but it doesn't have to be exact. I'm guessing these are steps in here. I can't tell, but I'm gonna guess. And then this part can be fairly complicated just because like there's just so much going on in the background. So I'm gonna move my focus over to this area here, where then I can start to draw in the parts that are more straight. Oh my gosh, I got 1 more minute. So this is like where the horizon line starts to show, right? Things start to get a little bit straighter. I'll put some more trees. All right, I might need a little bit of time. I'm almost there. This part is quite unexpectedly complex. Let's see here. There is something like this, and this part of the building is turning. And then you can use like slightly lighter lines as you go into the distance. I did a lot of drawings when I was in Europe, actually. Like I would just sit at a cafe and I would sketch buildings, other people, buses, just like the busyness of the city. And I loved it. I love just kind of people watching. I always thought it was really fun to sketch from life. So I am going to add some dark holes. And then as these go into perspective, they start to disappear. And then here it really starts to flatten out. I can't really see what's in the distance here, so I'm just gonna guess. There we go. Okay, so let's turn off that sketch layer. Okay. Cool. So I do like how this looks. I mean, like the traditional, in the traditional sense. I'm just gonna make some areas of my drawing a little bit more consistent. So for example, I wanted some thicker line art on the right. So I'm gonna try and do that for the rest of my buildings, just to kind of play up that consistency. And to be able to, you know, make things overlap and such. So if you squint at the drawing and, you know, ask yourself, okay, well, what parts stand out? What parts do I want to stand out? And then you can make those adjustments, right? I just want to make sure that like there are some things in front and some things behind, which that is important to me because that's like that's going to show depth, right? So when you have something like really busy like this, you would want to make sure that the line art, if you only have lines to work with, because like right now, you know, I could use values, right? But since I only have lines to work with, I need to make sure that my lines are doing their job. Ooh. Thank you guys. Yeah, the line weight I think is also really important. I'm just going to zoom in and take a look. So with the stuff that I added, right, you can see I added a little bit of bleed, just a little bit of water to that line art so that it looks like it has that sort of watery ink feel, which I like. Yeah. So there you go, guys. There is St. Basil's Cathedral, St. Basil's Cathedral. I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but yeah, here you go. Of course, it's missing all of the colors, and I definitely want to do that. I want to add the colors in, but perhaps I'll record it and I'll finish it in a stream on our server. Thank you. Yeah, this would actually make a really cool coloring book now that you say it. But yeah, if you were drawing along with me, post your artwork on the Discord or tag us at Wing Canvas. I would love to see what you did. Our streams are also available as replays, so if you want to give this a try another time, check out the replay and submit your artwork. I'd love to see it. Our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible for everyone. So join us for live stream lessons every week, because we're not just a YouTube channel, we are an online school of illustration, helping art nerds turn their passion into income. Shout out to our amazing students, some of you guys in the chat, and members for supporting our mission. We love seeing your incredible artwork and watching your skills improve in our classes and weekly critiques. Some of you guys, you know, join us for our streams. Some of you come to live streams a lot, and the more you practice, the more you are going to get better. Quinn, you're here all the time. I've seen you grow as an artist so much. You've really improved so much. So keep coming, keep attending those critiques, keep asking great questions. And pursue your curiosity. If you're an art nerd, be sure to join our Discord, where you can find our notes and our artwork from streams, as well as art challenges and other resources to help you improve as an artist. All right, guys. So if you want to learn with me or the other instructors, feel free to check out our website. We have lots of different types of classes and memberships, including live as well as asynchronous options. So however you like to learn, at your own pace or live so that you can ask questions, check it out. And you can learn with me or with Jesse or with Josh or with Iggy and Gonzalo as well. All right, guys, I will be posting this on the Discord. Hope you have a lovely rest of your evening. Thank you so much, Kevin, for modding, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.